The buzzards were already circling when Garrett Ashford first spotted the dark shape lying motionless in the sand, barely distinguishable from the rocks scattered across the Arizona desert floor. He squinted against the merciless July sun of 1883, the heat so intense it seemed to shimmer and dance in waves above the cracked earth. His horse, a sturdy buckskin named Dusty, snorted nervously as Garrett pulled the reins, bringing them to a halt. Most men would have ridden past, assuming it was just another victim claimed by the unforgiving desert that stretched between Chloride and the nearest settlement. But Garrett had never been most men. Something about the way the figure lay there, arms splayed outward as if reaching for help that never came, made his chest tighten with an urgency he could not ignore. He dismounted quickly, his boots sinking into sand that felt hot enough to cook meat. As he approached, his heart began to pound harder than it had in years. It was a woman, her dress torn and sun-bleached, her dark hair matted with sand and what looked like dried blood. Her face was turned to the side, lips cracked and bleeding, skin burned an angry red. She looked more dead than alive, and for a terrible moment, Garrett thought he had arrived too late. Then he saw it, the faintest rise and fall of her chest. She was breathing barely. "Jesus," he whispered, dropping to his knees beside her. He fumbled for his canteen, hands shaking slightly as he uncapped it. The water inside was warm, but it was all he had. Without hesitation, he lifted her head gently, cradling it in his lap, and pressed the canteen to those ruined lips. "Come on now, you need to drink." At first, nothing happened. The water just pooled at the corner of her mouth and dripped into the sand. But Garrett persisted, talking to her softly, encouraging her, and finally her throat moved. She swallowed. Then again. Her eyelids fluttered but did not open. "That is it. That is good." "Keep going," he murmured, tilting the canteen again. He watched as she drank, slowly at first, then more desperately as her body remembered what it needed. He let her have half of what remained, knowing she would die without it. The desert was still at least a day's ride from Chloride, and without water, neither of them would make it. But he had made his choice the moment he saw her lying there. When she finally stopped drinking, her breathing had evened out slightly, though she remained unconscious. Garrett looked around, taking stock of their situation. There was no sign of a horse, no supplies, nothing to indicate how she had ended up here or where she had come from. The tracks in the sand had been swept away by the wind, leaving only questions. He could not leave her here. That much was certain, but getting her back to Chloride would not be easy. Dusty was a strong horse, but carrying 2 people in this heat was asking a lot. Still, there was no alternative. Garrett lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was. Too light. She had been out here for days, he guessed, maybe longer. How she had survived this long was beyond him. He carried her to Dusty and managed, with some difficulty, to mount the horse while holding her. He settled her in front of him, one arm wrapped securely around her waist to keep her from sliding off. "Sorry, old friend," he said to Dusty, patting the horse's neck. "I know this is not what you signed up for, but we have got a life to save." They started moving, Garrett keeping the pace slow and steady. The sun beat down relentlessly, and he could feel the sweat soaking through his shirt. Every so often, he would stop to give the woman another small sip of water, careful not to use too much too quickly. By the time the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold, his canteen was empty. He had given her every drop, keeping nothing for himself. His throat was dry as sandpaper, and his head had begun to ache, but he kept going. The woman stirred occasionally, making small sounds of distress, but she did not wake. Garrett found himself talking to her, filling the silence with stories about Chloride, about his small ranch on the outskirts of town, about anything that came to mind. It helped him stay focused, kept his mind off his growing thirst. Night fell, bringing with it a welcome coolness that felt like a blessing after the day's brutal heat. Garrett did not stop. He knew the way even in darkness, had ridden this route countless times hauling supplies between the mining towns. The stars above were brilliant, scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet, and he used them to navigate. It was well past midnight when the lights of Chloride finally appeared in the distance. Garrett felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly brought tears to his eyes. Dusty seemed to sense their destination too, finding a reserve of energy neither of them knew he had left. The town was mostly asleep, but the doctor's house showed a lamp still burning in the window. Doc Harrison was known for keeping late hours, often tending to miners injured in cave-ins or bar fights. Garrett rode straight there, calling out before he even dismounted. "Doc, Doc Harrison." "I need help." The door flew open, and a silver-haired man in his 60s appeared, spectacles perched on his nose. His eyes widened when he saw the woman in Garrett's arms. "Good Lord. Bring her inside quickly." The next hours passed in a blur. Doc Harrison worked with practiced efficiency, examining the woman, cleaning her wounds, getting water and broth into her system. Garrett sat in the corner, accepting the water the doctor's wife pressed into his hands, drinking it down so fast he nearly choked. "You are dehydrated too, Mrs. Harrison said sternly, a plump woman with kind eyes. "Drink slowly now, I will make you something to eat." "The woman," Garrett managed. "Will she live?" Doc Harrison looked up from his patient, his expression grave. "Too soon to say. She is severely dehydrated, sunburned, has a head wound that is infected. If you had found her even a few hours later, I would say no chance at all. As it is, the next day or two will tell. You saved her life, son. Whatever else happens, you did that." Garrett nodded, unable to find words. He watched as the doctor continued working, and sometime before dawn, exhaustion finally claimed him. He slumped in the chair and knew nothing more. He woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. Mrs. Harrison was there immediately, pressing a cup into his hands. "She is still alive," the woman said, anticipating his question. "No change yet, but my husband says that is not necessarily bad. Her body needs rest." Garrett drank the coffee, feeling the warmth spread through him. "Has anyone come asking about her? Anyone report a missing woman?" "Not that I have heard, but word is spreading. Half the town knows by now that you rode in last night with a mysterious woman nearly dead from the desert. There will be plenty of curious folks stopping by, I expect." She was right. Throughout the morning, a steady stream of townspeople found reasons to visit the doctor's house. Most brought food or offers of help, but Garrett could see the curiosity burning in their eyes. No one recognized the woman. She remained a mystery. Garrett should have left, gone back to his ranch to tend to his animals and check on things. But he found himself unable to go. Instead, he sat beside her bed, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, willing her to wake up. The doctor had cleaned her up, and Garrett could see now that she was younger than he had first thought, probably in her mid-20s. Her dark hair, now washed free of sand and blood, fell in waves across the pillow. Even with the angry sunburn on her face, he could see she was beautiful. He wondered who she was, where she had come from. What had happened to leave her alone in the desert? The questions circled in his mind endlessly. On the afternoon of the second day, her eyes finally opened. Garrett had been dozing in his chair when a small sound made him jerk awake. He looked over and met her gaze, those eyes a startling shade of green even dulled by pain and confusion. "Where?" she whispered, the word barely audible. "You are safe," Garrett said quickly, leaning forward. You are in Chloride, Arizona, at the doctor's house. I found you in the desert 2 days ago." She stared at him, processing this. Her hand moved to her throat, and he understood immediately. He poured water from the pitcher Mrs. Harrison had left and helped her drink. She took small sips, wincing as the liquid touched her cracked lips. "What is your name?" Garrett asked gently. She was quiet for so long he thought she might have fallen back into unconsciousness. But then she spoke, her voice stronger now. "Amelia, Amelia Zimmerman. I am Garrett Ashford. You are safe now, Miss Zimmerman. No one is going to hurt you." At those words, something changed in her expression. Fear flickered across her face and she tried to sit up, only to fall back with a gasp of pain. "Easy now," Garrett said. "You have been through hell. The doctor says you need to rest. How much do they know?" Amelia asked, her eyes searching his face. "What did you tell them?" "I told them the truth. That I found you in the desert, alone, nearly dead. That is all I know to tell." She closed her eyes, and he saw tears leak from beneath her lids. "I cannot stay here. If they find me, they will kill me." Garrett felt his blood run cold. Who wants to kill you?" But she had said all she could. Exhaustion claimed her again, and she slipped back into sleep. Over the next 3 days, Amelia grew stronger. Doc Harrison was amazed by her recovery, calling it miraculous. The infection in her head wound responded to treatment. The worst of her sunburn began to heal, and she could sit up and take solid food. But she remained tight-lipped about what had happened to her, and Garrett did not push. He could see the fear that haunted her every time someone new entered the room, the way she tensed at unexpected sounds. He spent most of his time at the doctor's house, despite needing to return to his ranch. Something about Amelia drew him like nothing ever had before. He brought her books to read, told her stories about the town, made her laugh with tales of mishaps and misadventures. And slowly, gradually, he saw her begin to relax around him. On the 5th day, when they were alone, she finally told him what had happened. "I was engaged to be married," she began, her voice low, "to a man named Vincent Crowell. He owns a large spread east of here, about 3 days' ride. I thought he was a good man. Stern, maybe, but decent. My father owed him money, you see, from a bad investment, and Vincent offered to forgive the debt if I would marry him." She paused, her hands twisting the blanket. Garrett waited, letting her tell it in her own time. "I agreed. I thought I was saving my family. But after the engagement, things changed. Vincent changed. He became possessive, controlling. He did not want me to see my friends, did not like it when I spoke to other men. He would get angry over nothing, and that anger." She touched her head where the wound was healing. "I started to see what kind of man he really was." "Did he do that to you?" Garrett asked, his voice tight with anger. 2 weeks ago, I told him I could not marry him, that I would find another way to help my father with his debt. Vincent did not take it well. He told me I had no choice, that I belonged to him now. When I tried to leave, he struck me, knocked me unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a wagon, being driven into the desert." Her voice broke, and Garrett reached out, taking her hand. She gripped his fingers like a lifeline. "There were 2 men with Vincent. I did not know them. He told them to take me far enough that I would never find my way back, to make sure I understood what happened to women who defied him. They drove for hours. When they finally stopped, they left me there with nothing. No water, no horse, no supplies, just left me to die." "Jesus," Garrett breathed. The casual cruelty of it made him sick. "I tried to walk," Amelia continued. "I thought if I just kept moving I might find help, but the sun was so hot and I got turned around. Eventually I could not walk anymore. I remember lying down thinking that was it. That was how I would die, and then you found me." "You are safe now," Garrett said firmly. "I will not let anyone hurt you again. You do not understand. Vincent is powerful. He has money, connections. If he finds out I am alive, if he knows I am here, he will come for me, and he will not let anyone stand in his way. Then we will not let him find out." Amelia looked at him, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. Why would you help me? You do not even know me." Garrett had asked himself the same question, but the answer, he was beginning to realize, was simple. Because it is the right thing to do, and because I cannot imagine standing by while someone who has already been through hell gets hurt again. There was more to it than that, though he was not ready to say it aloud. In the days he had spent at her side, watching her fight her way back from the edge of death, listening to her voice and her laughter, he had felt something shift inside him. Something he had thought dead and buried after his own losses years ago. Doc Harrison kept Amelia another week before declaring her well enough to leave his care. By then, the whole town knew the story, or at least a version of it. The mysterious woman who had nearly died in the desert and the cowboy who had saved her. People looked at them with curiosity and speculation, but Garrett did not care. The question of what to do next loomed large. Amelia could not go back to her family, not without Vincent finding out she was alive, and she had nowhere else to go. "Stay at my ranch," Garrett said as they sat on the doctor's porch one evening watching the sun set. "At least until we figure out what to do. I have a spare room and it is far enough from town that people will not bother you. You will be safe there." "I cannot impose on you like that," Amelia protested, though he could hear the yearning in her voice. "You would not be imposing. I could use the help, actually. The place has gone to seed a bit since I have been spending all my time in town, and I promise I will be a perfect gentleman." She smiled at that, the expression transforming her face. "You have already been more than that, Garrett. You gave me every drop of water you had. Doc Harrison told me your canteen was bone dry when you rode in. You could have died. But I did not, and neither did you. That is all that matters." So it was settled. Amelia came to live at Garrett's ranch, a modest spread of about 200 acres with a small herd of cattle and a few horses. The house was simple but well built, with 2 bedrooms, a main living area, and a kitchen. Garrett had built most of it himself over the past 5 years, carving out a life here after leaving his family's farm in Texas. Those first weeks were strange and wonderful. Amelia proved to be capable and hardworking, taking over the cooking and helping with the daily chores despite Garrett's protests that she should rest more. She seemed to need the activity, the sense of purpose. And Garrett found himself looking forward to each day in a way he had not in years. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side during the day and talking long into the evenings. Amelia told him about growing up in Silver City, about her mother who had died when she was young, her father who had tried his best but made poor business decisions. Garrett shared his own story, how he had left Texas after losing his parents to fever, seeking a fresh start in Arizona territory. And slowly, what had begun as compassion and gratitude grew into something deeper. Garrett was not sure when exactly he fell in love with Amelia. Maybe it was the morning he found her in the barn, singing softly to one of the horses while she brushed its coat. Maybe it was the evening she laughed so hard at one of his stories that she nearly fell out of her chair, her eyes bright with joy. Or maybe it was the quiet moments when they sat together in companionable silence, and he felt more at peace than he ever had in his life. What he did know was that the thought of her leaving, of her being anywhere but here with him, filled him with a loneliness so profound, it made his chest ache. 2 months after he had found her in the desert, Garrett finally admitted the truth to himself. He was in love with Amelia Zimmerman. Completely, irrevocably in love. The question was what to do about it. She was still recovering, still healing from more than just physical wounds. And he did not want to push her, did not want to make her feel obligated because he had helped her. So he kept his feelings locked away, cherishing every moment with her while trying not to hope for more. But Amelia, it turned out, had been dealing with feelings of her own. It happened on a warm evening in September. They had finished supper and were sitting on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The air smelled of sage and desert flowers, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate. "Garrett," Amelia said softly. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Why have you never married? A man like you with your own land, your kindness. I would think women would be lining up." Garrett was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "I suppose I never met the right woman. After I left Texas, I was focused on building this place, making something of myself. And then the years just passed. I dated a few women here and there, but nothing ever felt right, nothing ever felt like." He trailed off, not sure how to finish. "Like what?" Amelia prompted. He turned to look at her, and in the fading light, her face was so beautiful it made his heart hurt. "Like this, like being with you." He saw her breath catch, saw the surprise and something else flicker across her features. "Garrett, I am sorry," he said quickly. "I should not have said that. You have been through so much, and here I am making things complicated. I needed you to know. I love you, Amelia. I think I started falling the moment I saw you lying in that desert, so fierce in your will to survive. And every day since has only made it stronger." Tears welled in her eyes, but she was smiling. "You think you started falling then? I started falling when I woke up and saw you sitting beside my bed, this man who had risked his own life to save mine. This man who asked for nothing in return, who gave me safety and kindness and a place to heal." "Amelia," he breathed. She reached out and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I love you too, Garrett Ashford, so much it scares me sometimes." He moved without thinking, cupping her face in his hands and kissing her with all the pent-up longing of the past months. She kissed him back just as fiercely, her arms coming around his neck, pulling him closer. It was a kiss that tasted of hope and healing, of second chances and new beginnings. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Garrett rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me. I know it is fast, and if you need more time, I will wait as long as you need. But I want you to be my wife, Amelia. I want to spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church in Chloride. Doc Harrison stood up as witness, and Mrs. Harrison cried happy tears. Most of the town turned out, curious about the mysterious woman and the cowboy who had saved her life and promptly fallen in love. Amelia wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Harrison had helped her make, and Garrett thought she had never looked more beautiful. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Garrett kissed his bride, he felt like the luckiest man alive. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a celebration of love hard-won and deeply cherished. Afterward, lying in bed with Amelia curled against his side, her head on his chest, Garrett felt a contentment he had never known was possible. "I never thought I would be this happy," Amelia murmured sleepily. "After everything that happened, I thought my life was over. But you saved me, Garrett, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," he corrected gently, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You gave me something to live for again, a reason to wake up smiling every morning." They built a life together on that ranch, a life filled with hard work and laughter and love. Amelia proved to have a gift for raising chickens, and soon they had a thriving flock that provided eggs for half of Chloride. Garrett expanded his herd, and with Amelia's help managing the books and planning, they began to prosper. The shadow of Vincent Crowell hung over them for a while. Garrett made discreet inquiries and learned that the man had told people Amelia had run off, painting himself as the victim of a fickle woman. He never mentioned what he had really done, and no one came looking. Eventually, they heard that Vincent had moved to California, seeking new business opportunities. The threat, it seemed, had passed. Their first year of marriage flew by in a blur of joy and discovery. They learned each other's habits and quirks, argued occasionally over silly things and learned to compromise, supported each other through the challenges that came with ranching in the harsh Arizona territory. And through it all, their love only grew stronger. In the spring of 1885, Amelia told Garrett she was expecting a child. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. The baby, a boy they named Thomas, was born that November, healthy and loud and perfect. Garrett held his son for the first time and wept, overwhelmed by the miracle of it all. "We made this," Amelia said softly, watching her husband cradle their child. "You and me, out of all that pain and fear, we made something so beautiful." Thomas was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Margaret, and then another boy, Daniel, 2 years after that. The house that had once seemed spacious grew crowded and chaotic, filled with the noise and energy of children. Garrett expanded it, adding more rooms, and Amelia turned the yard into a garden that bloomed with vegetables and flowers. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that threatened the cattle, illnesses that scared them half to death, lean years when money was tight. But they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. The children grew up hearing the story of how their parents met, how their father had found their mother in the desert and given her every drop of water he had, risking his own life to save hers. It became a family legend, the foundation story of their love. "Tell us again about the desert," little Margaret would beg, and Amelia would oblige, though she softened some of the harsher details for young ears. "Your father is the bravest man I have ever known," she would always conclude. He did not hesitate, did not think about himself. He just knew someone needed help, and he gave everything he had. "That is what you do when you love someone," Garrett would add, pulling Amelia close. "You give them everything." As the years passed, Garrett and Amelia became pillars of the chloride community. Garrett served on the town council, helping to resolve disputes and plan for growth. Amelia organized charity drives for families in need and taught Sunday school at the church. Their children grew strong and healthy, learning the values of hard work, kindness, and standing up for what was right. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Garrett took Amelia back to the spot where he had found her. It was a journey they had never made together, and she had been hesitant at first, not sure she wanted to revisit that place of pain and fear. But Garrett convinced her, and so they rode out together on a clear October morning, leaving the children in the capable hands of Mrs. Harrison. They reached the location around midday, though it looked different now. The landscape had changed with the years, shaped by wind and weather into new configurations. But Garrett knew this was the place. He would never forget it. They dismounted and stood there in the quiet, the sun warm on their faces. Amelia looked around, and Garrett saw emotions flicker across her face, too complex to name. "I died here," she said finally. The old Amelia, the scared girl who thought she had no choices, no power. "She died in this desert. And the woman I love was born," Garrett said, taking her hand. She turned to him, eyes shining. "I used to think what happened to me was the worst thing that could ever happen, being left to die, so alone and terrified. But if it had not happened, I would never have met you. I would never have had this life, our children, all of this joy. Is that terrible to be grateful for something so awful?" "No," Garrett said firmly. "It is human. We do not get to choose the roads that bring us to where we are meant to be. We can only be grateful when we arrive." He pulled her close, holding her as the desert wind whispered around them. This place that had nearly claimed her life had instead become the beginning of everything they treasured. "Thank you," Amelia whispered against his chest. "For what?" "For every drop. For giving me everything." They stayed a while longer, making new memories to overlay the old ones, and then rode home together as the sun began its descent. Home to their children, their ranch, their life built on a foundation of love that had started with one act of selfless compassion in the merciless Arizona desert. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Thomas grew into a serious young man who wanted to study law, dreams Garrett and Amelia encouraged despite the cost. Margaret proved to have her mother's head for business and her father's love of the land, already declaring she would take over the ranch someday. Daniel was the wild one, always getting into scrapes and adventures, keeping his parents on their toes. Garrett's hair began to gray at the temples, and lines appeared around Amelia's eyes, but to each other, they were as beautiful as the day they married. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset, hands intertwined, talking about everything and nothing. "You ever regret it?" Amelia asked one evening when they were both in their 40s, the children grown or nearly so. "Stopping in the desert that day. You could have had a simpler life without all my complications." Garrett looked at her as if she had spoken gibberish. "Regret finding you, regret loving you. That is like asking if I regret breathing. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Amelia Ashford. Every challenge, every difficulty, I would face them all again in a heartbeat for this life with you." She smiled, that same smile that had captured his heart all those years ago. "Good, because I would fight my way out of that desert 1,000 times to get back to you." They kissed as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. Two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting from the ashes of tragedy. When Thomas left for school back east, Amelia cried for a week, but she was proud too. Their boy, getting an education, making something of himself. Margaret did indeed take to ranching like she was born to it, becoming Garrett's right hand in managing the operation. And Daniel, after a few years of wandering and adventure, came home ready to settle down, bringing with him a sweet schoolteacher from Prescott who won over the whole family immediately. Grandchildren came, filling the ranch with new life and laughter. Garrett and Amelia watched their legacy grow. These children and grandchildren who existed because a cowboy had once stopped to help a stranger in the desert. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There was music and dancing, more food than anyone could possibly eat, and toasts that went on for hours. As the party wound down and the younger grandchildren were carried off to bed, Garrett found himself standing with his 3 grown children, looking out over the land he and Amelia had built together. "Your mother and I have been talking," he said. "We are getting older, and we want to make sure everything is taken care of. Margaret, the ranch will go to you since you have always loved it most. Thomas, we have set aside money for you to open your own law practice when you are ready. And Daniel, we want you and Sarah to have the north section to build your own place." "Dad, you are talking like you are dying tomorrow," Margaret protested. "You and Ma have plenty of good years left." "We do," Garrett agreed, "but we also know better than most how quickly things can change. How fast everything you have can be taken away. We just want to make sure you are all provided for, that you know how much we love you." Thomas, the serious one, had tears in his eyes. "Everything you and Ma have done for us, everything you have given us, how do we ever repay that?" "You do not repay it," Amelia said, appearing at Garrett's side as she always did. "You pass it on. You love your own children the way we loved you. You help people when they need it. You build something good and lasting. That is how you honor what we have given you." The children hugged their parents, and Garrett held tight to his family, grateful beyond words for all of it. As the years advanced and they moved into their 50s, Garrett and Amelia slowed down a bit, letting the younger generation take over more of the day-to-day work. But they remained active and engaged, enjoying their grandchildren, traveling occasionally to visit Thomas in his growing law practice in Phoenix, watching with pride as their family flourished. They took walks together every evening, moving slower now but still hand in hand, still finding new things to talk about after decades together. The love that had begun in such dramatic circumstances had matured into something deep and enduring, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and unwavering commitment. "You remember what I said to you that first night after you woke up at Doc Harrison's?" Garrett asked one evening. "You said a lot of things," Amelia replied with a smile. "I told you that you were safe, that no one would hurt you again. And you kept that promise, every single day for all these years." Garrett stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. The sunset light made her silver-streaked hair glow, and he thought she had never been more beautiful. "I would make that promise again right now. For all the years we have left, however many that is, you are safe with me, Amelia. You are loved." "I know," she said simply. "I have always known." They continued their walk as the stars began to appear, two figures moving through the gathering dusk, inseparable still. On a warm spring morning in 1908, 25 years after Garrett had found Amelia in the desert, they sat on their porch surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch had expanded over the years, now run primarily by Margaret and her husband, but it still felt like home, someone asked, as people always did about the desert, about that day that had changed everything. And Garrett and Amelia told the story one more time, finishing each other's sentences as they always did, adding details the other forgot. "The point is," Garrett concluded, looking around at all those beloved faces, "that love is not just a feeling. It is a choice. It is deciding that another person's life matters as much as your own, maybe more. It is giving everything you have, even when it is hard, even when you are scared." "Your grandfather gave me every drop of water he had," Amelia added. "But more than that, he gave me hope when I had none. He gave me safety when I was terrified. He gave me a future when mine had been stolen. That is what real love does. It gives and receives," Garrett said, pulling her close. "Because you gave me just as much, Amelia. You gave me purpose and joy and a family I never thought I would have. You gave me a reason to wake up grateful every single morning." Their youngest grandchild, a girl of about 5, looked up with wide eyes. "Are you still in love, Grandma and Grandpa?" Amelia and Garrett looked at each other and smiled. "More than ever," they said in unison. As the sun climbed higher and the family drifted into various conversations and activities, Garrett and Amelia remained on the porch, content to sit quietly and watch the life they had created unfold around them. "No regrets?" Amelia asked softly. "Not a single one," Garrett replied. "You?" "Only that we do not have another lifetime to do it all again." He squeezed her hand. "Then we better make the most of the time we have left." And they did. They filled their remaining years with love and laughter, with family and friends, with quiet moments and grand celebrations. They watched their descendants grow and flourish, carrying forward the values and lessons they had worked so hard to instill. When Garrett passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Amelia grieved deeply, but with gratitude too. They had had 43 years together, 4 decades of love that had started with one act of compassion in the desert. She had been blessed beyond measure. She joined him just 2 years later, her heart finally giving out one quiet morning as she sat in the rocking chair he had made for her 50th birthday. The family said she died with a smile on her face, as if she could already see him waiting for her. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a shared headstone that read simply, Garrett Ashford and Amelia Ashford, two souls, one love, bound by grace in the desert. Their story became family legend, passed down through generations. The tale of the cowboy who stopped to help a dying woman in the desert, who gave her every drop of water he had, and in doing so, found a love that would last beyond their lifetimes. Their descendants would tell it to their own children, along with the lessons it contained about compassion, sacrifice, and the transformative power of love. The ranch continued, generation after generation, a testament to what Garrett and Amelia had built together. And on warm evenings, when the desert wind whispered through the sage, and the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky, some swore they could still see two figures on the porch, holding hands and watching the sunset, forever bound by a love that had conquered even death. Their story was not just one of survival or rescue. It was a story of two people who found each other when they needed it most, who chose love every single day, who built something beautiful and lasting from the ashes of fear and pain. It was a story of giving everything and receiving even more in return. It was, quite simply, a love story for the ages, born in the unforgiving Arizona desert and lasting into eternity.